Today, our guest is singer and actress Juliette Angelo. We'll be talking with Juliette about her childhood and being a child actor in some of the biggest hits on Broadway and television. We'll also talk about addiction that began in Juliette's childhood and her journey to sobriety and healing, and where she is now and how she is moving forward in her life. Join us today with Juliette Angelo.
How come you only loved me when I was skin and bones, when I was a broken home, when I was a shattered soul? How come you only loved me when I was skin and bones, when I was...
Welcome, everyone, and welcome, Juliette Angelo. I am so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Juliette, your survivor story is different from some of our other guests. So please share with our listeners what you're comfortable with sharing of your story.
Okay. So this is probably the first time I've spoken publicly in a while. And I had everything on the internet 2 years ago, but took everything down for, legalities, and it just wasn't the right time. But I met Penny and we connected very deeply, very quickly.
Instantly.
Yeah. And I was so happy when you reached out to me to do this, because it just felt like the right time, and I'm in a good place to start speaking up and advocating again. So I am a survivor of a lot of things. One of those being trafficking, child exploitation, child abuse, incest. I had a very adverse childhood, and I was hurt by the people that were closest to me for the entirety of my childhood and my teenage years, until I broke free from everything when I was around 20, 21. But, I've seen the darkest things the world has to offer, and didn't think I was going to survive a lot of it. Still don't really know how I did. I think, sobriety, what we'll talk about later, is a big part of it. But yeah, I had a really intense, insidious childhood, and I am grateful that I'm in a place now where I could start speaking up again. But it's a process, it's a process every day. Things are still difficult and hard to conceptualize and process, but I am grateful to be here and to be able to start speaking up in a safe way, just this is my introductory podcast, like back into this world. So after my last podcast that I had 2 years ago, I just want to keep it a little bit more boundaries with it for now. When the time comes for me to start really digging into it a bit more, I think I'll be comfortable then. But that's a brief synopsis. I grew up in the acting industry in Los Angeles. So with my childhood and the things I experienced as a kid within my own home, to then go into the acting industry at 8 years old, there was just no safe place. And my sanctuary was horses and music and all of the things that I still love today. So, but yeah, that's like a brief explanation. I could say a little more, whatever you think. That feels safe to me,
Absolutely. And that's what we share, is only what's safe for the survivor, the victim, to want to talk about their story, because it's your story. And you and I have talked about this. And matter of fact, just before we got on the air, we were talking about this again. We've seen from our organization, other organizations exploit survivors for the benefit of the organization. And
yes,
you and I, from the first time we met, I shared with you that we really work to protect survivors and make sure that it's when you are feeling that you are in a safe place and that you are in a safe time and space within your own life and a healthy place within your own life, and that it's always your story to tell. And we're going to get more into that, about how you are learning and practicing and setting those boundaries in your life. But one of the things that really brings a uniqueness to your voice is that you did grow up working as a child, and you grew up in an industry that has child labor laws.
Yes.
And one of the things we're seeing so shockingly in our country right now is this horrendous violation of child labor laws. And we're seeing children who are being put into horrendous working environments because the adults around them are not enforcing those laws or practicing those laws. And it's just an exploitation of those children. And sadly, within the industry in which you grew up in, which was the entertainment industry, we know from other child actors that it's not an industry that always has adults there that are
No,
protecting the children.
no.
So growing up in an industry with strict child labor laws, one, as a child, did you understand the laws were meant to protect you? And two, did you have safe adults in the theater or on set that you felt were looking out for you?
No. No and no. I didn't know anything about laws or I mean, when the people who are closest to you are hurting you, that's what you come to expect from everyone.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, when you're a child that's being abused, you attract more predators. That's just the way that it is because I was trained, to believe that the people who were dangerous were the people who were safe because that's how my brain was developed as a kid. I started working on Broadway when I was 8 years old. From 8 to 11, I was surrounded by kids, as well, but 50, 60, 70, 80 adults. Like, I don't even know how many adults were there and not enough wranglers and not enough people looking out. And sometimes the wranglers are predators. And sometimes, there's just not enough eyes on the kids. I remember in one show we had tutoring and I think it was like one tutor for 30 children. Like it was just all different ages, there was nothing in place to protect us. And it's so easy to take a child aside and abuse them when you're in a massive theater and there's no one around, and you're in between a lunch break or you're in between rehearsals and it's terrible, and I think I keep mentioning I had a podcast 2 years ago, and I'm sure that's a lot of my trepidation is just from that experience. I had so much hit me so fast. And it was the most liberating thing I've ever done for myself. Like I'm immensely proud of that podcast. But, when I came forward with a lot of this, I had so many people I grew up with and kids I grew up with say, me too, but nobody stood with me on it, which was really hard. And we all, I had people reaching out to me saying, you should file a lawsuit against the theaters and the different productions. But unfortunately, it's hard as a party of one. That
Right.
stuff just doesn't really happen. But when people are ready to come forward, they're ready to come forward. You can't force anybody to talk. But what I'm saying is that we all experienced the same thing. And I've seen so many of these girls that I grew up with and boys, but I was an actress, so I was surrounded more by other actresses, just grow up and downward spiral and use and drink and just try and cope and understand these lives that we grew up in. Because, one of the things I've always said is growing up, they want you to have the body type of a 10-year-old, but the sexuality of like a 30-year-old woman.
Yes.
And that's something that is celebrated in the industry. There's this attachment to like pedophilia that I see in movies now, with women who look like children. And it's almost like,
Yeah.
some type of loophole, but it's disturbing. And there were roles that I'd read for as a kid that were so overly sexualized. And I remember just being so uncomfortable. And I was uncomfortable every day, but there would just be certain times, even as a teenager, that it's so wrong. And it's so obvious too. Like there's so much of it that it's almost people just make an excuse for it because it's so common.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Broadway was chaos and so many kids, not enough protection. I was abused on a show along with many other girls, and it was so common that I don't know, it's unfortunate how many of us go through the same thing and we don't think anything of it, and it's not something that's abnormal. And so many child actors come forward and it's like, "Oh, well, here's another one," but we listen to the story and then we don't change the environment. So, all we're gonna keep doing is repeating the same exact cycle until something changes. And I think a lot of that is just through speaking up
Yeah.
and TV shows that I worked on. Broadway was where I started, but there were certain television shows that I worked on where as an adult, I look back and I think that's not okay. Like the way that I was being handled is not okay. You should also, regardless if it's in a sexual nature or not, you should never just touch a child.
Right.
You should never, a wrangler should not be allowed to even grab your arm.
Yeah. Yeah.
They just shouldn't. There should be boundaries and consent, and there should be no closed doors, and there should be security cameras, and there should be security too. But it's I don't know what Broadway's like anymore. I just know when I was a kid, it was chaos.
Mhm.
And I had a show where the little girls' dressing room was directly below the men's. And that was like, why would that even be?
Right. Yeah.
Why would it be like, why would we have that?
Yeah, exactly. In the entertainment industry, whether it's music, whether it's acting, whether it is anything else out there that is within like live stage or something like that, we tend to think that there's a norm that we do, quick changes
Mhm.
and
Ugh.
everyone's body is just okay to be flashed in
You're
seconds,
right.
whether it's the modeling industry, anything. It's like that's not okay.
No,
That's actually not okay,
it's not
and there's a
okay.
pressure that's put on young females and males, but there's a pressure that's put on young people that just get over it. It's no big deal, just get over it, and
Wow, you're blowing my mind right now. I didn't even think that. Like, that didn't even cross my mind that these quick changes I used to
yeah,
do.
that we say, "Oh, that's okay. It's no big deal. It's okay." No, it's not okay. No, it's not okay. We wouldn't say it was okay in gym class. We wouldn't say it's okay in all these other industries, but for some reason within the entertainment industry, we want to say it's okay
So
because
true.
this is the only place we have to set up and we just only have this curtain over here that has this gap like this big in it, you
It's
know?
like you know what it's like? Dance
Yeah,
competitions.
exactly.
They put all these well, I grew up doing that too, which we
Oh,
spoke about.
yes. Yeah, yeah.
But they put all these kids in this big room with all these parents. Sometimes there's dads in there,
Yes.
and you're just expected to get
Yeah.
changed.
Yeah, exactly.
And that it is just that's so true though. I remember in Billy Elliot, there was a quick change. We had to run off. It was in between. It was called Shine. Shine. I remember that. And I mean, there were just so many things. Even the dressing rooms, it was just a pit.
Yeah.
Like it was all different. I don't remember Mary Poppins, there were only a couple kids. Billy Elliot, there were a ton of all different ages, and it was there's no privacy, it was just I can't believe that it's also taking you to tell me that that's like, I'm allowed to be uncomfortable with that because I was so desensitized growing up in dance competitions and then entering and at that point, my body was just like, I had no concept of privacy or boundaries or anything. Like those words didn't
Yeah.
exist,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But that's a really great point that you make that we don't even allow children the ability to say no.
Exactly.
They can't. This is what you do. You were hired for this job. You need to change in front of everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
That's abuse.
Yeah. And you grew up in the dance world.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I remember dancing as a kid because I grew up in gymnastics and you had to take dance as well. And I remember as a kid, when we did dance shows and things like that or gymnastics, we may put our hair up and get it out of our way. and may have pretty clips, but we did not have massive amounts of makeup and false eyelashes. And I am stunned and shocked by what I see very young girls who are in dance right now, and the amount of adult looking makeup on them and false eyelashes. And these are very young girls.
You're telling me.
And the parents are being told it looks better on stage.
Yeah.
We're sexualizing these young girls and
they wear nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And telling them that, well, this is what makes you look good on stage. No, you know what? You're going to look good on stage even without that makeup.
Yeah. Go look, dress like a nun and go on stage. You're still going to look fine.
Yeah. It's about your dance, and it's not about you looking like this hypersexualized adult child with this massive amount of makeup on. But it's stunning to me and shocking to me.
So common.
And that even as adults, we're still saying, oh, that's okay. And I'm seeing parents still say, oh, no, that's okay.
I think.
Yeah, no, it's really not.
People must be desensitized to it. I grew up in the dance world. Someone very close to me owns a dance studio. I'm trying my best to avoid any legalities or laws.
Yeah. Someone who keeps haunting me. Yes, I know. Yeah, I know.
There's a ghost nearby. But one of the, most corrupted studios, I think they're probably that exists in this world. I hope it doesn't get worse than that. I don't know. But I mean, that person used to choreograph dances. And I remember there was a dance. I will never forget this. It was a bunch of little girls. And it was to the song, I'm feeling yummy head to toe, whatever, dressed like, like they're edible, essentially. And I don't know how, if you can picture that. I hope you can't, but it was.
And they can't picture my reaction right now that you could see where my hands are like covering my face. Yeah.
It is unbelievable that no one could just look at this and understand like how perverted and disturbing this was. And it's so common. It is so common. The red lips, the eyelashes, the itty bitty bathing suits, all these little, she choreographed a dance to Centerfold. My Angel is the Centerfold. Yeah. So there is, you want to, this is, you can't, I wish audio could capture our faces right now. But it is.
I know. Oh my gosh.
This is the world I grew up in. So you can only imagine how long, and it's still to this day, I have been trying to rewire my brain and understand that like, this is so, I don't care what anybody says, that's abuse.
Oh, absolutely.
And that will stick with those kids for the rest of their lives. Even if you are not actively being molested or anything like that, when you are sexualized to that point and you are being exploited on a stage in front of 200, 300 people, adults in an itty bitty costume, flailing around, that is exploitation. We're exploiting kids. What are these judges thinking? Why is that normal? Why are they winning? That's the other question, is that why would they win? Why are we thinking that this behavior is okay? And it's so commonplace. And as time has gone on, I swear, like the costumes have gotten smaller and smaller, and it's changed also to this almost modern way of dancing where it's almost like naked. Like there's this, I'm not involved with the dance community anymore, but there's almost this naked quality to the costumes that they wear. And it is so perverted. It's so disgusting. When I had my podcast, I put everybody on blast. I was going after all the dance competitions, and it's everywhere, It's like when Larry Nassar got taken down.
Exactly.
And it's these major companies.
That's what I was going to bring up too.
That are supporting this. Yeah. It's crazy.
And hiding it.
Yeah.
And hiding it. Yeah. And hiding it.
And still hiding it.
And still hiding it. Yeah, exactly. And I understand that parents want their child to shine and they want their child to excel at something the child loves.
They can shine in clothes.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that I tell parents, and you've been in my training on human trafficking.
Oh, it's so good.
That's one of the things
so good.
Thank you, Juliette. That's one of the things I tell parents also is that, when I'm holding up my cell phone right now, my smartphone, is You have to be the parent over your child's online activity. You have to be the parent over your child's sports activities. You need to be the parent over your child's dance competitions, over all those other places of your child's life. Is you still have to be the parent there. And that if you look at your child and say, I wouldn't want my child going to the grocery store looking like that. I wouldn't want my child going to school looking like that with that much makeup on and false eyelashes and things like that. Why do we say it's okay for an 8-year-old child, a 10-year-old child, a 13-year-old child to be on stage in a dance competition
13 is
with
still
that
a
much makeup? When
too.
it's still a child. When it's
I don't
about
think
the
people understand
dance.
that. I know.
Yeah, when it's
about the
when it's
art.
about the dance. It's not about your child looking like an adult.
No, and that's the thing, is that if you want your child to shine, they should look like a child.
Yes.
They should not look like an adult.
That's exactly right. If it's
I
a
think
child competition, it should be a child competition. Yes.
It's not which child looks the most adult.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the most important episodes I did was I did abuse within the dance community because I was so involved in that world. And there were so many ways that was hidden. And it was mind-boggling to me that so many people would just deposit their children and leave. And with no worries, not ringing any alarms. I had a lot of people involved in this person's dance studio. It's kind of it's a pool for people who don't care. I wouldn't say there's really any good parents that involve themselves with studios like this. They're very competitive. It's not about dance. It's not about the art. It's about winning. And they're going to do whatever they can to win. And a lot of these parents live vicariously through their kids.
Yes.
But I had a lot of people reach out to me after I came public saying why they removed their child from the studio. And I had one person in particular tell me that I think they were 3 or 4 years old. They came with a complete rip through their leotard, like crotch to butt, totally nude underneath, got sent home. No one was contacted. No one said anything. No one reached out. And these places, this is it is where predators thrive because they have children from ages 2 to 14 without any parental supervision. And they're so vulnerable that it's so easy to isolate them and abuse them, but these dance competitions, I can't believe with Larry Nassar, there were some changes within gymnastics, but there hasn't been like a takedown of the dance community.
Yeah, no, there were some changes within the gymnastics community, but boy, not enough.
Barely.
Exactly. Not enough.
And it shouldn't have just been Larry Nassar.
Right.
Like there's a million Larry Nassars. He just got caught.
Right.
And
it took, and just like what you were saying earlier, it took a group of strong voices to come forward. It took a group of them. And I've talked with other survivors as well. And my mom's story. My mom lived the entirety of her life in silence because that's what societal norms were. And my family lived with the shame. And that was the societal norm of just be quiet, don't say anything. And you live with shame of things that are done to you sexually. And
it's the worst feeling. Shame is the worst.
It is. And especially when it's a child.
Horrible.
When that predator knows how to manipulate that child to not say anything and groom that child to stay silent and not say anything.
Yep.
And like I was sharing, there are some survivors that I've been talking with on the podcast who we all agree that not every victim and not every survivor has it within him or her to tell their story and to say their story. And that's okay too. That not everyone wants to talk and not everyone feels the strength or the ability or has it within them to talk and share their story. And they have the right to be in that place also. But for those that do, those are the people that we need to surround as well and protect them and make sure that they're not re-exploited, but also so that their voice is heard and that we can create systems of change. And those systems of change need to come a whole lot faster than what they are. And we're seeing that within online child predatory behavior. As adults, we are not moving fast enough on protection of children. And that's just hard for me to understand as why we as adults don't move faster when it comes to children.
I don't understand it either.
I don't get it. And then one of the things I wanted to share too is that there are a lot of amazing parents that are out there that are in the entertainment industry, may have children within dance programs. And we have amazing parents that are out there that we know that are doing great things in parenting their child. And while we've been having the conversation, I was thinking about one of my best friends in my 20s, and her daughter is a very, very, very well-known actress and was, as a young child, an Academy Award nominee. And my friend removed her out of the school system when bullying was happening and homeschooled her, and then was on that set nonstop and had eyes on her daughter, and was that parent who was that dream parent.
Yeah.
And her, both of her children grew up as healthy individuals and understanding healthy boundaries and healthy bodies and things like that. And so there are amazing parents that are out there doing the right job in their parenting skills. And I'm sure that, like any other parent, they're questioning everything they're doing as well. Like, oh my God, am I doing this right?
Yeah.
Mom and dad, you are. There are some good parents that are really out there.
It's all up to the parents. It's all up to the parents.
It is. It really is. It is a lot about parenting and those skills. And then in the entertainment industry, you nailed it when you said there's a lot of parents that are living vicariously through their children, and that seduction of fame and that seduction of money plays.
It's escapism.
Yeah, and plays that role. But you have really taken yourself in a good direction. And
Thanks.
I'm so proud of you, Juliette. I am.
Thank you.
You have quite a healing story for people, and really taking control of your life and determining what you want your life to look like. And you mentioned one of those things, and it was sobriety. So, I know that sobriety is an important part of your life and your healing journey. How has sobriety impacted your healing journey? And in addition to or separate from your sobriety, what has your healing journey entailed?
I got sober March 27th of, was it 2021? Yeah, because it'll be 3 years this March 27th, which is out of this world. And I started drinking at a very young age. I was introduced to alcohol at a very young age. I was living with alcoholics. It was, it was taught to me from a very young age that this is how you cope. And if you're upset, do a shot. And that was, something that stuck with me. And when you grow up in an environment like that, you never think that it's wrong, because that's just what you're exposed to. So I started drinking really heavily around 19. My abuse stopped around 17. And that was when I felt myself just starting to downward spiral. And it was almost a loss to stop being abused. I don't know if that resonates with anyone listening.
It will.
But it was a loss. Yeah. It felt like a part of me had died when I stopped being abused. And I started filling that void with alcohol because I couldn't cope and I needed to numb everything. So one thing led to another. I moved from Los Angeles to Nashville on a whim. I was, just this shameful, it felt like I was like a living bug. Like there were just bugs all over me. I was disgusted with myself. I had nothing left to give. Except for my dog, who I always mention.
We love.
Who we love. My dog saved my life. But I wound up, the last night I drank, I was suicide attempt, suicide hotline, got 5150'd and rock bottom, like just was all out of options. And that next day, I went to the hospital overnight. It was terrible. I came home. My dog was upset. I felt like a horrible individual. I'm not just hurting myself anymore. I'm also hurting my dog. This is the only thing I love, the only thing I care about. So I decided to kind of take a break from drinking. And that was it. That next day, I accepted what had happened to me bit by bit. It was a process. Everything was there, like everything I experienced was right there. And the alcohol was just my attempt to try and make it disappear. And as soon as I got sober, there's no way to hide. So anything that I was trying to numb, run away from, escape from it was there on a platter. So that next day, I had a trigger that just led to 2 years of intense trauma work. I was in AA every single day, just trying to get by, trying to stay sober, trying to understand that I had a life worth living, which I didn't think I did. And again, I would be dead without my dog. I will
Mhm.
100% say that. If I did
Mhm.
not
Me
have
too.
him in my life,
Mhm.
I would be dead. And he was not the dog I wanted. He was the dog that I got. And
Mhm.
we were meant to find each other. He is my soulmate.
Mhm.
I love him. But
Mhm.
my dog was something that kept me sober. And I just dove into I had about 17 years of unprocessed trauma, specifically sexual trauma, and it is still something I am working on today. That stuff doesn't just go away. I don't think it ever goes away.
Yeah.
There's always going to be things that I discover about myself, but sobriety is what led to my healing journey. And if I did not get sober, I would not be here today. I would probably be, I don't even know, honestly. I couldn't even tell you because I was
Unthinkable.
so unthinkable. I was so far gone. My brain was broken. Like I had no concept of who I was. I had no identity as a child, I was just molded and shaped to what was most marketable and what made the most money and what pleased other people. My body was not mine. My money was not mine. My identity was not mine. So from the moment I got sober, I had to put all these pieces together and try and understand who I was and what I wanted to be. And I will say, for the first year and a half, my identity was my trauma. Like that was
Yeah.
it
Oh,
because
yeah.
I couldn't get out of it. It was
Right.
like every day I was fighting a new fight and every day I was battling a new difficulty, a new trigger. I would have episodes. I had such bad anxiety and I had PTSD. I had so many things going on at once that was all I could focus on was just one day at a time. I was on the phone all day. I would be in meetings. I'd be in therapy. I was being stalked. So, that didn't help matters. I was trying to understand my financial situation because that was drained from all my acting money, not drained by me, but
Right.
my
Exactly.
acting money was gone. But
Right.
sobriety is the best thing I've ever done for myself. I will say, I can't say I made that choice for myself. It was like
Mhm.
something came over me that said to me, this is do or die. Like
Mhm.
there's nothing left. I had nothing left. I was a shell of an individual. I had no will to live. I also had no will to drink. Like I was so tired of being tired and miserable. And I want to just repeat what we were talking about how shame is the worst feeling. It is a
Yeah.
combination of all of the worst emotions wrapped up into one
Yeah.
because not only does it affect the way you think about yourself, but you can
Mhm.
feel it. Like I just
Mhm.
felt it every day.
Yeah.
It was terrible trying to come to terms with certain experiences I had and certain things that don't even make sense, like they're just so dark and so insidious that you wonder how a person is capable of doing this. But every day, it got better. And I'm in a point now where I'm in a safe space to start speaking up again. And I understand how important it is, even though it is a sacrifice on my side, because as soon as my voice is back in the public eye, that comes with a lot of great support, but also a
Mhm.
lot of unwanted attention.
Right.
And I do have a very intense story, but I also know that a lot of people do. I am not alone in this whatsoever. And I learned that from my first podcast. When I came forward things that I didn't even know were shared experiences that I thought this could not happen to anybody else. I had people reach out to me and say, "Me too, me too."
Yeah.
I had people reach out to me and say the same people, did the same thing to them
Yeah.
in the same community, in the same hometown. And a lot of us grew up thinking that we were the perpetrators, and that was something that I really had to work on, that I was raised to believe that I was the one hurting my abusers
Mhm.
and that I was the one instigating it, and that's something that really has stuck with me for a very long time, and I think that is what doesn't allow a lot of people to process, is because a lot of people don't come forward because they think that they played a part in it because of how we're groomed to believe.
Right.
But through sobriety and, spirituality and emotional healing, I did all different types of healing. I did yoga, I did body work. I was just trying. The sexual abuse was so intense that I didn't even feel connected to my own body, my own sexuality. I had obtuse sexual fantasies. I had things that were, why would I crave this when it's so dark and scary? But that was how my it was like my bio whatever you wanna call it, like, that's how I was trained to
Right.
think that intimacy is a
Right.
scary, it's someone taking something from you, and that's not what it is. It's a shared experience, and it's love and consensual, and it can be fun and all these different things, but the baseline is love, and that was never what I was taught as a kid. I was told that men want one thing from you, and if you can't give them that, then you have no purpose in their life, and that I was abused by all genders, but that is something that always stuck with me because I'm in my first real relationship now, and
Mhm.
that is not the case.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
not it. That's not how it's supposed to be. But that was what I thought, and it's been a challenging journey, and it's still challenging. I have so many challenges to this day that have been I just cry so much now. Like, I cry, it's a release, but it's so sad to think it's almost in mourning,
Yeah.
and it's like a mourning cry. Like, I'm crying for the loss of something that I never had. Like, I'm never going to have these innocent childhood experiences. I'm never going to have these certain things that I always wanted. And I think the stage of my healing journey now is I've moved forward, and now I'm trying to see how do I live my life with the most purpose and the most fulfillment, because I'm in a peaceful place now, and as someone who grew up in chaos, that can be really scary. Peace can feel almost unsafe because you're, like, waiting for the ball to drop,
Right.
which when I lived in chaos, it was like I had so many things going on at once that I couldn't even think.
Right.
Now, thinking is a privilege too. A lot of people, I didn't think for, like, 21 years. I
Yeah.
just survived and, got through my day to day, and that was it. Like, I didn't think about life. I was just in autopilot, and I was completely disconnected from reality. I was living in a disassociative state of shock. I was just deer in the headlights trying to survive. So now I'm at a place where I feel everything. I think about everything. I have a whole life ahead of me, and it hits you hard. It hits you when I finally got to stability. I think I slept more than I have ever slept in my life. Like, it was like all my years of living caught up to me, and my body just quit. And it was like,
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
25 years of sleep that I need to catch up on, but it feels like an impossible journey when you start, and it feels like you're never going to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I swear to God, I mean that so, so deeply. Like, I did not know when it was going to end. I had no idea. I thought this was my life. I live in trauma. I can't get out of it. I can't get safe. I just was hoping and praying and begging to one day experience serenity, safety, anything. And it happened, and it did. And I have moments of it, I still have pain, and it's not perfect at all, but I have a really wonderful life, and it's been really, really hard work. I've had so many scary experiences throughout coming forward, liberating yourself, talking about things. That was the most courageous thing I've ever done, but it was also the most terrifying thing I have ever done. And I think that's a lot of my fear with this podcast, even though it's a completely new experience. I'm in a completely different place. That is, over with. That's
Yes.
not happening again.
You're in a different space even from when we first met.
Yes.
You are. You even have a radiance about you and a peace about you that is so beautiful to see.
Thank you.
And there's a growth, and you have a phenomenal mentor with you in your sobriety right now.
Yes. Love her.
You said so much that I want to touch on, and then we'll talk about where you are right now, which is in an absolutely amazing place with your artistic endeavors. But there's so much that you said that I really want to emphasize for people to hear, because I think it resonates with folks. It resonates with me because it took me a long time to figure out that I didn't understand how to experience joy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how to feel comfortable in peace because of trauma that had been in my family's life and in my DNA. And when you experience that trauma and live in that place of trauma, it's hard to experience joy, and it's hard to feel comfortable in joy and comfortable in peace. Peace and joy are where we feel place.
Yeah, threatened.
I don't know how to interact in this space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that resonates with many people that are out there. And it's something that we need to, I think, talk more about and understand that not everyone just can be in this space of feeling happy.
Yeah.
Can experience this space of, okay, be happy now. When I don't know what that is, how do I get there?
Mm-hmm.
And I've watched you take extraordinary steps to get yourself there. And you are taking extraordinary steps to claim the life you want. And so if you could share with people how you're building your life and your relationships on your terms and how you learn to do that.
I think I'm still learning to this day. I think it's a process, and I'm still learning. So this might sound really corny, but I read so many books growing up. That was part of my sanctuaries. I read like 150 books a year, and there was like a feeling within those books that was safety. It was a complete escapism. Actually, a lot of the times I was being abused, in place of perpetrators, I would have a book character. And when I got sober and was able to process as an adult, it was almost like that facade went away. And I was like, no, that wasn't Danny Phantom. That was this person. It was like how my brain protected me as a child. But there was a feeling in those books, especially when it comes to a relationship, that I wanted to emulate. And I had a lot of people tell me that because of my past, I would never attract good people, because it was almost like I had it labeled on my forehead that I was a victim. I won't lie. Like I've attracted a lot of bad men and bad women who want to step in as my mother. That was something too. I've attracted a lot of bad organizations. I've attracted a lot of, manipulators and people who exploit, because they see it. But I think something that happened through sobriety and through trauma work was my discernment, because my intuition was off. So I had to work on feeling and understanding that when I'm scared, that's not something I should move towards. I should move away from. So for me, I think in the life that I'm building for myself now, the first step was that I just had to believe. And I know that sounds like super hippy dippy, but that's literally all I had. I had nothing besides just believing and hoping that it would one day work out. And I think everybody has their own way of processing and working through stuff. For me, consistency was something that one day at a time mentality, and things just began to slowly get better. But in building my relationships now, I don't look for a lot of them. A lot of them just show up. I had to learn how to be comfortable being alone. I had to let go of a lot of resentments because I found that until I let go of those resentments and almost practice some form of forgiveness, I continued to attract the same people. It was really weird. It was like until I let go of certain people and made peace with certain things, I just kept attracting the same experiences. And your environment is a huge deciding factor in your life. I had to get myself out of a lot of environments that moving to Montana, for instance, Albuquerque was chaotic. Moving to Montana was kind of that movement towards peace that I really needed. But in my relationships, it's been a learning experience. And I had a lot of people come and go really quick when I first moved here. And it's because I was not, where I needed to be yet. But I don't know. I think the number one thing was the relationship with myself and
Yes.
knowing that I am worthy of good people. I'm worthy of a good man.
Yes.
I'm worthy of a good life.
Yes.
Everything started within myself. And the more comfortable I felt with myself, the more that I loved myself, the more people I attracted that also loved themselves.
Yeah.
And then it's easier when you love yourself, it's easier to love other people, and I don't know. I'm still learning, like
Yeah.
to this day.
Yeah.
I'm still learning. Sobriety was a major turning point for me, but I have some really good people in my life. I have a really good man in my life that was like a miracle. I didn't know men like him even existed. That was also just not giving up though, and I really wanted to protect myself because I've been abused by so many men, countless. I don't even know how many, and I didn't want to get into a relationship where I was just going to be abused more because so many survivors will
Mhm.
just repeat that cycle
Right.
because that's all they
It's what they
know,
know.
So
It's what's comfortable for them. It's the space in which they know how to act. It's what they can
mhm.
expect. It's what little control they have. They know how to control the uncontrollable
Yeah.
in that chaotic space. One of
Yes.
the things you said that I wanted to touch on, which I think has been so much a part of your healing journey as well. And you touched on something a little bit earlier about how you were taught that your sexuality is,
Mhm.
and I can't remember exactly how you worded it, but your sexuality is what men want. It's how you serve men.
Mhm.
But little girls are taught that men are the power structures.
Yes.
And so we are taught in these just societal norms that men are power structures and we are to live our lives in
Yes.
compatibility to that power
Yeah,
structure.
that's not true.
Exactly. It's not.
That's
And
not
it's not
true.
true for all the genders that don't identify as males, but it's also not true for men.
Yeah.
And, it's a false narrative that we put on men, but it's also a false narrative that we put on little girls. And I think that's one of those things that your generation is doing so well in coming out and talking
Mhm.
and expressing that, no, that's not what we see and that's not what we think. And it's taken women from my generation and before to keep hitting that brave, courageous men and women to keep coming forward. And we need those men as allies, but those brave females coming forward and knocking down that false narrative.
Yeah.
And you are doing that, Juliette, not just in podcasts like this, not just in your sobriety, not just in your AA meetings, but you are doing this through your art and on stage.
Mhm.
And I have been so blessed and privileged and honored and overwhelmed and just full of joy to watch you take authority over your life
Thank you.
and get on that stage in a brave, brave way and share very openly and honestly who you are and through your songs. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But tell us about where you're at now in who you are artistically. You have extraordinary artistic talents in you, not just as a singer and musician, but an extraordinary writer, and you write from the heart. But tell us where you're at now within who you are artistically.
I'm right kind of at this cusp of a lot of things, right now. I left the industry, grew up acting. It took me 2 years to kind of even think about doing anything besides focusing on sobriety and trauma work. So I started singing live last year, just old school, like bars and stuff. And this year is turning out to be, it was almost like last year prepared me for this year. And all the things that I wanted to do last year, I didn't get to do, but I understand now why I needed to wait because it was not the right time. But I write my own music and I curated this Patsy Cline show that I've been doing everywhere. I'm an old school, oldies kind of girl, and music, it's not like just a tribute show. Like music was my safe space. And my guitar, I would only play when no one was home, and I would only sing and play when no one was there. And that was like the one thing that was mine, and it was attempted to be exploited. And I just didn't let it happen. For some reason, that was the one thing that I'd fight about and be like, no, I'm not doing that. And I think that's when something is just so personal to you. But I write my own music, and it stemmed from, as a kid, how I processed and tried to understand what was happening to me. I would write about it, and I would write kind of these abstract poems. They were usually very dark. Warning sign, by the way, red flag.
Exactly. That's right.
Pictures I draw, anyway, that's a whole other segment. But I would write these poems, and I'd write these stories, and they would rhyme. So it was one day I just decided to put it to music, and I was like, oh, it's a song. And I don't write a lot. All the music I play live is pretty much all the music I've ever written. It comes in moments. I don't write all the time. I don't write for structure. It's literally like a therapeutic practice, and then it becomes a song. But the music is like very personal to me. Mac Miller, his swimming album, saved my life, changed my life. It was how I taught myself how to self-soothe, which was something I didn't know about until I was like, oh, this is self-soothing. I didn't understand that. I didn't know how to calm down. So his record, I would just listen to it on loop, and that's how I learned to calm down. But creatively, I'm really excited. Everything's starting like right now, my show next week. Well, not when this is aired, but I have some really big shows coming up, and I just sat down and I had this idea for a short film. It's the relationship between a mother and a daughter, not connected to my own life, but it's the relationship between a mother and a daughter. And it's, about abuse and the ways that kids communicate that, but it's still a story, but it's like an educational story, because it's not just it's about the relationship, but it's also about the ways that things kind of translate into real life, and all the cries, for help that kids have and that I had that were very obvious to me, but people just aren't aware. But with my art and with music, everything goes hand in hand. And that's why I was so excited about this podcast, because like my music is my story. And if you don't know my story, then you don't know my music. And these things have to go together in order for the whole picture to be there. And I was just talking to my friend last night about that. And if you don't know my past, you don't know me. I'm my worst fear. I'm what I was growing up, which was just this entity and this shell of an individual and this performer that had no connection to reality. And it was all about performance, and it was a facade, and it was a character I created. And with my music, and whenever I perform, like from when I walk on stage to when I'm backstage, like nothing changes.
Yeah.
I've had so many people tell me that. My friend told me that at TEDx Billings.
Yes.
They're like, you are exactly the same sitting here as when you walk on stage. And I don't know if I, like, am missing a chemical in my brain, but I don't get scared. Like, that's a possibility. I don't get scared, I don't get nervous. The only times I ever get nervous is when I'm not myself. I get nervous if I am, performing as something that I'm not. I get nervous if I feel like I'm faking something, and it's probably a trigger from when I was a kid
Yeah.
and not being able to fully express myself. But my life, like my goal with my music is I just want to be as transparent as possible. And I think that's why, I'm not worldwidely known, but even just in the towns that I've played and the places I've played here, I mean, I've played in front of thousands and thousands of people.
Yes.
And what I've always heard is that they just connect. And when I mentioned sobriety and the people that I'll come up to me after the show, and I had someone even like buy a CD for me, and he was like, my daughter is really struggling. Will you just write her a little note? I'm sure she would love to know that you're sober. And I think that's why I don't have anxiety or nervousness about my career, because it's not about my career. It's about helping people. And when you have good intentions, the path just kind of opens up.
Yes.
And I've put in the work, I mean, with guitar playing and my vocals, and like I've put in the work. It's not like I just sit up there and I'm like, whatever. Like I have classical training and, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I feel most comfortable when I'm the most honest, because there is absolutely someone sitting in that audience that has been through the same thing.
Yes.
And maybe has never even felt safe enough to admit it. And with my podcast that I had too, that was one of the most amazing things, was people who would reach out to me and say, I didn't even know how to articulate what was happening to me. And the word, like, I needed to hear the words that you said in order to piece that together. It was like you saying, that we were all so comfortable changing in front of each other. Like, I didn't even realize that was wrong. And until you realize it and process it, that's just going to fester and sit there, and it's going to come out in your day-to-day life, But I don't know. My music I love it. I love playing it. I love playing my Patsy Cline shows. I'm so excited to have more opportunities. I'm ready to start speaking and advocating and educating and connecting with people, and everything goes hand in hand. The short film is really exciting to me. That's something I've been thinking about for a super long time. And I love writing. I studied sketch comedy in LA. Like, I've always just loved writing, and I love short films. That's always been something, because I feel like you can make such an impact in such a short amount of time.
Absolutely.
But I have so many experiences that I want to share. And I know that through the arts is one of the best ways that people will listen, because you can do it in a way that's tasteful and approachable. And a lot of the reasons I think people aren't aware and aren't educated is fear, and they don't want to know. So if there's a way to do it that's almost abstract and artistic, it's really easier for people to metabolize it, as opposed to if it's just bang, like in their face, And it's baby steps. And a lot of the times people are scared because the same thing happened to them and they haven't accepted it.
And change is also hard for people.
Yeah.
Some people say, if you confront me with that, then that means I may have to make the decision to change, and I'm not ready to make that decision, or I'm not ready to.
It's terrifying.
I'm not ready to take those steps.
It's like when I knew I was an alcoholic, it's terrifying. Yeah. Attaching a word to a behavior makes it real.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. And that's both good and bad. That's both good and bad. One of the things you said was you did the work, and let's make that super clear to people that this is work. And while it's your passion and you have you have extraordinary talents within you that you personally, Juliette, have worked to build, and you've worked to nurture those talents and foster those talents. But the other thing you're doing as well is it's not just the glory and the glamour of you being on stage.
No.
Booking your own shows, girl.
Yeah.
You were out there on social media saying, I need
I'm a
help.
party of
And
one.
you're out there saying, where do I go from here? I want to go to this community. Who out there knows who I should contact to try to play in that community? I mean, you're booking your own shows. You're negotiating your own contracts. You're negotiating your prices. You're doing all the work behind the scenes, also the non-glamorous stuff
Yeah.
that people don't see.
Mhm.
You are really taking all around 360 approach to your own life and saying, I'm controlling this right now. And you'll get to that point because you are so phenomenally talented and you have done the work behind it. You didn't just pick up your guitar and all of a sudden say, well, I want to get on stage now.
Yeah.
No, you have done the years and years and years of work on yourself to get there in your craft.
I think also a big part of that is because when I grew up, I had no control over anything.
Yeah.
Everyone, I was, dictated by the people closest to me. I was dictated by management and agents and PR. And for the first time in my life, I am a completely solo entity.
Right.
And I have control over everything. And I'm aware I could get a manager, an agent, a booking agent. I do not want that. I want control of my life.
Right.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. Well, the good thing that as a child, you were paying attention and you learned some really great skills because you were doing a good job.
Thank you.
And before we get to where we tell people how to contact you to book a show, and we want people to know that you are selling out. You are going into these beautiful theaters and you are performing to sell out crowds. And you're not just going into the big theaters, you are going to places where you can connect to people. So into the coffee shops and things like that, where you are really connecting and you are building this wonderful supportive community around you, which I think is so healthy. But before we get to where we tell people how they can get one of your CDs, how they can book you as a performer on stage, a singer-songwriter, your Patsy Cline show, as a speaker. Let's do one more act of how we encourage parents, how we make parents aware, how we make adults aware. Tell our listeners what actions within a working environment that includes children are important for adults to take to make sure that the environment is safe for children.
Awareness is probably the number one, and acceptance, because nothing's going to change if you don't accept that it could potentially be happening. I think that is what affects this cycle the most, is that people are aware. They have a feeling, they have a suspicion, and then they don't do anything about it. They'll just say, oh no, it couldn't be happening, because no one thinks that it could be happening in their own environment, in their own community. That stuff doesn't happen here. That stuff happens overseas. That happens in poorer communities. It happens everywhere. I can guarantee you it's probably happening in your neighborhood. It's probably happening to a kid that you know right now. Maybe one that comes over your house for play dates. Maybe one that's in your house, and until you are able to accept that and become aware of that, that's when change happens. And I think you need to care.
Yeah.
If you don't care, then there's nothing we can do. I can educate you as much as I can about all the warning signs, all of the behaviors I had, all of the ways that I cried for help. But unless you care and you're willing to do something about it, it doesn't mean anything. I think people are scared. I think a lot of it is just fear-based. People are scared of the possibility of it happening. A lot of people are scared because it happened to them and they haven't processed it. So a lot of people are unaware. And that's probably the biggest part, is that people are just unaware and they think that certain behaviors are normal. For instance, I had someone reach out to me after my podcast. We reconnected. She sent me like an old picture that I drew. And it was a message of LOL, this is so weird. Unaware. And it was a picture of a dog crying tears of blood. And it said, I wish mommy and daddy would stop taking pictures of me.
Oh. Yeah.
And it's these little things that some people might just brush aside and be like, that's a weird kid.
Mhm.
We need to look deeper into that and understand that I was involved in child exploitation.
Mhm.
Those were not just pictures, those were lingerie shots. If somebody had looked deeper into that and brought the picture to me and said, "Hey, Juliette, why would you say this? Like, what's going on in this photo?" I probably would have said something. Oh, I walk down the hallway and strut my stuff. What do you mean? They have a camera. I walk down the hallway and strut my stuff. And we would have been able to bit by bit start uncovering what's actually going on. And all it takes is that first step. If I had a wellness check on my childhood home, who knows what would have happened to me? If I had somebody walk into my house and just investigate a little bit, if somebody had just tipped off, that's all you need to do. It's so easy to just call for a wellness check. If you suspect that something's wrong, I work in advocacy with kids now. I have a job and it's part of my job. It's mandatory reporting. If I think that anything is even slightly suspicious, it is my job to report that. And I'll be honest, I don't really know why people don't do more.
I don't either.
I think that's what you were saying too.
Yeah.
I don't know why people. Maybe because they're not close enough to it. I think ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
I think some people they don't want it in their life and they don't want to see it happening. And I've had that with friendships. I've had people who want to be my friend on a surface level. They get to know me more and they don't want to because it's too much. And if that's the case, God bless you. You don't have a place in my life.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on to somebody else who does care. But I think the number one thing is awareness. And if you do care, taking those steps to understand the warning signs, taking those steps to contact someone like me, to go to one of your trainings. It takes 2 hours and you're going to have a world of information that you didn't have before. So when you see the girl down the street, she's got a bruise on her arm. She has bad hygiene. She is adverse to touch. That was me. Everybody knew, don't give Juliette a hug. Why can't this child have a sleepover? Why can't this child do this? There's just all these little subtleties, and kids are so, so smart, and they will do everything they possibly can to communicate that something is wrong.
Yeah.
A lot of kids don't know what's happening to them. They're not going to walk up to an adult and say, "Hey, so-and-so is touching me." That's what they've been taught. That's normal. So sometimes you need to allow them to communicate the way that they can. And for me, a lot of that was through art and writing. It was through behaviors. I had constant stomach aches, things that didn't make sense. But for me, a big thing was art. A lot of it was through self-expression. And there were just certain things that were suspicious. And I think one of the worst things when I came forward were the people who reached out to me and said, "I always suspected something." And let me tell you, there were a lot of people who reached out to me and said that. And I think that is one of the worst things that you can hear because it broke my heart to think that there were so many people who had an inkling, who had a suspicion that something was going on with me and never did anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
There were so many times that someone could have even confronted someone I was with and no one ever did. I think that's why I have such a fire within me now because I have the ability to do that for a kid. I already have. And even if nothing comes of it, at least they know that someone tried.
Mhm.
And that means so much because I didn't have that. And as a grown woman now, even if I'm not able to change their environment, at least they're going to know that someone tried to file a report. And then when they get old, and if they want to accuse them or take them to court, they have proof that someone else suspected something, which makes a world of a difference legally.
Yeah. Yeah.
World of a. If you have one, wellness check, CPS report, whatever, that makes a world of a difference for an adult survivor to come forward and try to take down their
Yeah.
perpetrator.
Yeah.
It changes everything.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I'm so passionate and adamant that people, if you suspect something, you need to report it. Even if it's just an inkling, even if you think you're crazy, or like, if you have that intuition that something is wrong, it's probably
Yeah,
happening.
exactly. But, one of the things that I think is so good that you've been hitting on is that sometimes adults, they need to feel permission to speak up. So here's your permission.
Yeah.
We are giving you
I'm giving
permission.
you it.
We are,
You
yeah,
can quote me on
exactly. We
that.
are giving you permission to speak up. It is so much better to make that call and be wrong. Who gives a shit if you're
Yes.
wrong?
Who
We
gives a
don't
shit?
care if you're
You
wrong.
could do it
Call,
anonymous too.
make the call. It is so much better if you make the call and you're wrong. But most of the times, if you are feeling the hair on the back of your neck stand up, if you're
There's
feeling
a reason
like I've got a
why.
gut check on this, like it doesn't feel right to do this, yeah, it's not. If you're questioning that this just doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel right to hypersexualize my young child on that stage, it's not right. It's because it's not right.
It's not
And don't
right.
let another adult tell you, oh, we need to do this.
That
It's
it's
fine.
fine.
No, your gut was right, mama. Your gut was right, dad. Your gut was right, older brother, grandma, older sister, whatever. No, your gut is right.
It is. It's always right.
And be that parent that's standing up for not only your child, but all of the other children that are out there.
For the kids who don't have parents who stand up for them, you could make a difference by standing up for your kid or a kid that you don't know. It's a ripple effect. The
Yeah.
more people who start reporting, standing up, confronting, accusing, things are going to change. That's how that works.
It is perfectly okay to normalize 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old little girls not wearing adult makeup on stage
Yeah.
in a dance competition. It is perfectly okay to normalize that and stand up and say, yeah, no, I don't think this is okay. It's about dance. Let's keep it about dance. But first and foremost, these are children. This needs to be about their childhood, not them becoming 8-year-old little adult women on those stages and those beauty pageants and everything else that just is hypersexualizing tiny girls.
Yeah, beauty pageants
Ooh,
too.
my
I never did
gosh. Yeah,
those.
good.
It's true though. All you need to do is just stand up to it and say,
Yeah.
this is not right.
Yeah, these are children.
I'm not saying don't expect to be, surrounded by hugs and open arms,
Right,
but
yeah.
it makes
Or even
a bigger
or
impact.
loved by your child that all of a sudden now my mom and dad are the weird ones,
Yeah.
No, protect your child. Protect your child in every area. Be the parent in every area. Oh, Juliette, you know that the two of us can sit and talk for hours, which we
I
have.
know.
Yeah,
We have.
which we
This
have.
was so
Yeah,
great.
which we have.
This was so fantastic.
Yeah, and we will continue to do. Well, I love you to
Mhm.
pieces. And the moment
love
we
you
met,
too.
I mean, it
The
was
stars
just like,
aligned.
yeah, it was just like, yeah, I get your life because I lived it with my mama,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
things you say or what, people know my story, things you say are what my mom lived and the trauma in my family that we lived through my mom's own trauma that she lived as a child. And it's one of the reasons why people like you and survivors like you are so important in my life, because I get to see you being healthy and
Yes.
breaking,
It's healing.
breaking those barriers. As most people know, my mom never, ever, ever got justice. And so to see other survivors of sexual violence and sexual abuse to their child to get justice in the different ways and be the voice that you've had to be in your life and that you are now being for so many others. And let's, also make sure that people understand the reality of, so you were this child actress on stage and on set in very well-known television programs, and that you have come through living a very normal life in that you've had jobs as a coffee barista.
Yeah.
You've had jobs. And let's just make sure that we normalize you in the greatness of you claiming your life and your financial independence is you've had very normal
Like a
jobs.
Hallmark
Exactly.
movie.
You've had very normal jobs also. And that
Yeah.
people relate And
I
people
have.
relate to you in that way as well, is that you have a very normal job right now, and you are also telling your story through your art. So let's tell people right now how they can connect with you to book you for a Patsy Cline tribute show, to book you as Juliette Angelo singing your original material, to book you as a speaker. How can they contact you to get in touch with you to do that?
I think the best way also to contact me to be on other
Yes,
podcasts, would love
exactly.
that. The best way to contact me, I have like my music email, but that's kind of where I try to keep all my business stuff, not my personal, you know. It's Juliette, Juliette, music contact, musicccontact at gmail.com. I have my website, which is Juliette-Angelo.com. I have my Instagram, Juliette Angelo with 3 O's because Juliette Angelo with 1 O got deleted
Oh gosh.
and yeah,
Yeah.
disappeared forever. But yeah, my email's the best way to reach me. But I'm excited. I really want more opportunities like this. It's so different to not be on my own podcast. It's a relief. It's so much easier to just like talk to a friend and it takes the edge off, and it's the micromanaging that I used to kind of do. I would love more opportunities like this. I'd love more opportunities to speak. I mean, I just feel like I'm at a point now where I could start sharing more of my life and my story. And I'm genuinely so passionate about it. I just want to keep myself safe. But I'm learning even from today, like I am in a much more healed place.
Yes.
And I am,
Yes, you are.
even from when we met. I mean,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think a lot of that is from consistency, stability, you know, a healthy relationship. I healed a lot of trauma with him. You know, that has helped a lot with my body and my comfort within my body. And there's just been so much that has changed that allows me the freedom to speak more openly and not have as many, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like I'm not anxious, I don't have triggers,
Right.
I don't, you know, like that, those feelings that come along with it. Like I just feel so much more comfortable just speaking. But thank you so much for having me. I just loved this.
Oh, thank you so much, Juliette. Oh, thank you so much. And you are in a much more settled way, just in your countenance and everything. And I really want to give a lot of recognition to you. Found a tremendous sponsor also in your
Yes.
sobriety.
Mhm.
And you have had some wonderful adults
I
come
have
into your life.
wonderful women in my life.
Yeah, you have had some really good women come into your life to
Yeah.
surround you with the knowledge that you have safe spaces and places to be in, to go to, and give credit.
I have a
Yeah.
plan B. Do you know what I
Yes,
mean?
exactly.
It's not me against the
Right.
world. It's like I have, if I need support, I have support. You know, I have.
Yeah, you have a team that has come alongside you to help, kind of be those rudders and be a sounding board for you, and as well as cheer you on and celebrate your victories and give you all the credit for what you are achieving in your life, because you really are building your life on your terms. And Juliet, it's such a joy to watch you do that,
Thank you.
because I'm seeing the beauty that's coming out in you.
I
And
am happy. I'm a pretty happy girl.
you can see it. You can see the
Yeah.
peace within you, and you can
I have
see.
I have a lot of love in my life. I never had that before. So I have love within my relationship, with my friends I have around me. I have love for music. I have so much love that I've never had that before.
Yeah.
And it changes everything.
Yeah,
Everything.
absolutely. I agree with you. But it started with you.
Yes. And I have love within myself.
That's exactly right. It started with you.
You're right.
Juliette Angelo, thank you so much for your voice, for being our guest today, for the important
Thank you,
work you are
Penny.
doing. Oh my gosh, you are so welcome. We will have information on the topics we discussed today our task force website at yhttf.org. And if anyone would like to get in touch with Juliette and you can't remember how to get in touch with her, we will have that information on our website, and they can also use the form on our website if they would like to get in touch with you for speaking, for podcasts, for in-person small groups, large groups. You're going to be speaking at an Out of the Darkness suicide prevention event.
Mhm.
If you want to get in touch with Juliette, you can do so on our website, and we will put you in touch with her as well. But thank you again so much for being with us today, and we'll do this again.
Yes, this was awesome. Thank you for listening.
To all of our listeners, thank you for sharing this journey with us. Now with her original composition, Skin and Bones, Juliette Angelo.
Hollowed out, can't you hear the way I scream and shout? You say there's nothing I can cry about. Oh, I guess that I'll shut it down. Let it go, I'm dying inside but can't let it show. God forbid I let someone know. Gotta keep it clean, keep it white as snow. How come you only loved me when I was skin and bones, when I was a broken home, when I was a poison soul? How come you only loved me when I was skin and bones, when I was a burnt down hole, when I was a blackened soul? All my life, I've always been the one that did it right. If only someone would look in my eyes, but no one kept me in their sight. Can't you see, my God, the way your words are hurting me? My lungs are shattered, I can hardly breathe. My suffering is your ecstasy. How come you only loved me when I was skin and bones, when I was a broken home, when I was a shattered soul? How come you only loved me when I was skin and bones, when I was a burned down hole, when I was a poison soul? Skin and bones, skin and bones.
Join us next week when our guest will be Chris McKenna from Protect Young Eyes. If you suspect labor or sex trafficking in the state of Montana, please call 833-406-7867. If you are being trafficked and need help, please call 911. If you suspect labor or sex trafficking outside of the state of Montana, please call your regional FBI office. You may also call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 888 373 7888.